It begins essentially with a narration. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth, wonderful alliteration there, on this continent, a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, invoking the Declaration of Independence. And the word conceived and the word dedicated, particularly the word dedicated, become important in this address. Why is he at Gettysburg? They didn't say, come and give a speech. What's he doing there?
He's just, he's there after the battle, as almost like ceremony for all the people who fell there.
Yes.
It's kind of epidictic in that.
Yes, but even more specifically. That's all true, but...
it's a dedication of a cemetery.
Yes, a cemetery. It's an actual cemetery that's laid out. You can still see it today. You go there. It's a very large, extensive cemetery. It is a cemetery for the northern dead. Lincoln is coming to dedicate this cemetery. Now, if you go to Gettysburg, on a large plaque at one place, there is a copy of the letter that was sent to Lincoln inviting him to come. Okay? I don't have a copy of that. I've searched for it on the internet. I can't find it, at least not quickly. But if you find it or if you go there and read it, the tone of that letter is very similar to the tone of this address. It's a rather simple, direct invitation to the president to come to the dedication of this cemetery. Its language is not ostentatious. It has no flourishes in it. And I wonder whether Lincoln didn't have that invitation somewhere in his mind when he actually sat down to write this address, the way we often, you know, if someone invites you to something, you very often take on the tone of that invitation. If you have to speak or go there, or you dress in a certain way or whatever, you don't want to be out of step. You want to fit in with the whole nature of the invitation. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. And of course, if you look at the end of the address, you could say that the entire address is about whether that nation will endure or will it perish. Because the country is an experiment, after all. There's nothing that ordains its perpetual existence. And it was already being rent in half by this conflict. So we are engaged, and then he pans in closest focus. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. And Lincoln actually stood up on a stage at the cemetery, facing a large number of people, and spoke. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place. Portion, place, field, final, for those who here gave their lives, that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Is that phrase, fitting and proper, familiar to you?
Would that be from the Declaration of Independence?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure, but it might be referenced in the necessary and proper cause of the Constitution. No.
Don't think so.
Is it religious?
Yes, it is biblical. The phrase is found in the translation of the Bible that Lincoln used. But why should it be especially familiar to all you today?
Was it in Kennedy's inaugural address?
No, it may have been in Kennedy's, yes. But also, we just looked at it 20 minutes ago. It's in the inaugural. It's right at the beginning of the inaugural. And it stays as a phrase throughout American political rhetoric, fitting and proper. It's there, right? I didn't make a mistake. It's right there. You read it. I ask you to read the first paragraph. Language requires the... is everything all right, Vinny? Okay. Language requires the agony of attention. The agony is a Greek word whose origin, I think, means to wrestle with someone. Anyone here ever wrestle? Do you get tired wrestling, Joel? Yeah, you get tired in about 30 seconds because it's all your energy against someone else's, all their energy. Boy, you really get tired after 3 minutes. I don't think I've ever been more tired in my life doing high school wrestling. But that's what an agony is. The point is, you've got to wrestle with every phrase and every word. So then, Lincoln says, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate. Now the language gets increasingly religious, but not in a very specific doctrinaire way, we cannot hallow this ground. What does hallow mean? If you say that's hallowed ground. Yes, to make holy, to make something holy. What holiday do we have that has the word hallow in it? Halloween, yes, which has a religious origin, Halloween. Its origin is not in horror movies or costumes or anything like that. Its origin is religion. All Hallowed Eve, right before, I think, All Saints' Day. So, the brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The language is simple, it is elegant, yet Lincoln is using certain stylistic features, alliteration, parallelism, add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. And indeed, Eisenhower moved to Gettysburg after he retired from the presidency. He intentionally moved to a farm near Gettysburg because it was so close to his heart as a president. It will not be forgotten. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. In other words, what yet needs to be done? The war's not over. Philip? Win the war, and what does winning the war mean? Yes, well, but in order to win the war, this is 1863. The Union had a victory at Gettysburg. What is still necessary? The war won't end for another year and a half, almost. What's going to have to happen in order for the war to be successfully brought to a close? Katie? More fighting, more killing, more death. He's dedicating a cemetery not at the end of a conflict, but right in the middle of it. That's the unfinished work. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That from these honored dead. Now, if you look at the end of this address, look at the that's. That from these honored dead, that we here highly resolve, that this nation and that government. See all those clauses, how they build at the end? And it reminds me a little of the similar string of clauses that begin with that in the Declaration of Independence. That is a document Lincoln knew virtually by heart. So I would suggest, as I put on the outline for today, that one of the things that is going on in this Gettysburg Address is a kind of syllogistic logic. It's certainly a kind of logic. The nation is dedicated to the proposition all men are equal. Some would destroy the nation and its liberty so that the nation might live. It lives only by those willing to die here, but it must also live by those who continue to be willing to die. We've come to dedicate the cemetery to those dead, but only those dead and those willing to die have consecrated it. And we, the living, must be dedicated to the great task before us to resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that the nation shall have a new birth of freedom and shall not perish from the earth. So there's a logical line there, but the logic is completed only if those listening to him or reading his words understand that the struggle must be continued. But it's also true that in a sense the logic breaks down. There's no necessary continuance. It doesn't have to happen. It will happen only if those continue the great task, if and only if. And then the nation shall not perish, for that is the only way to preserve it. It's both a logical address and a deeply, deeply moving address. I wanted to close by making a few remarks on something Lincoln believed in, and something George Washington believed in, and something a number of people believe in. But I think it's often misunderstood. And I'm not asking you to believe in it, but I'm asking you to consider what it means. Lincoln invokes a providential sense of history. So did George Washington. So have many leaders. Even leaders of opposing armies have each invoked a providential history. That is the way it is. Lincoln suggests that in the inaugural. So what does that really mean? I once thought, that an idea of providence controlling history should be relegated to the happy pieties of the past. in the sense that, as Voltaire once said rather mockingly, God is always on the side of the bigger battalions. And that I had misunderstood this providential sense as an assurance that everything would turn out all right in the end. You know, everything would be okay. But I don't think that's what is meant, as we just saw in Lincoln's inaugural address. I think what it means is that providence, or to put it another way, history, events, some force beyond our control, puts us as a society, as a nation, in a situation which tests us, which causes great harm to the fabric of the nation, which causes death among its citizens, and that we very often as individuals cannot control that. We have no individual control over that directly. So how then do we face that? I think it means you have to see it through. You have to, in some sense, dedicate yourself to a specific course of action that you think will help result in an outcome that is good. Other than that, your only real option is to completely withdraw from it. But don't forget, it is causing great pain and suffering all around you, including perhaps the members of your family. So I don't think it means a specific religious article or doctrine of faith. I don't think it means that things will turn out well. I don't think it means some fortunate or divine intervention. I don't think it means any of those things. I think it means that the world sets in motion events which we cannot control often and which we struggle to live through and to regain some sense of equilibrium and peace, some sense of justice. You can think of all of the places in American history where you would not have happened what had happened if you could undo it. I don't care whether it's seeing something like Dachau or going to Wounded Knee, where the massacre of Native Americans occurred, or going to Khe Sanh in Vietnam, or going to Lockerbie, where the plane was bombed out of the sky by terrorists and people were killed. There are too many, the list is long, of events that we would rather not have happened. So what do? I think the providential sense of history that Lincoln and others are trying to communicate is that we must try to do right as we see the right. This is what Lincoln says in the inaugural, that is the only way through it. And there is no guarantee of what the end is. You may say there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You may talk about a victory in war, but you don't know. Every war that's over that we've studied, we know what happened because it's over, at least if we read its history well. Every struggle or war or tragedy that one is in the midst of, you do not know how it ends. You cannot know. And it can take turns of events which are astonishing. Who thought we would be in Afghanistan 17 years? Who thought that we would go into Iraq and, in my view at least, break it? And now we are, in part, very much responsible for that. So I don't think the providential sense is one of safety or victory. I don't think it's back-patting at all. I think it's far more profound. I think it's a kind of test. It's not a kind of reassurance. And that kind of test is one that ultimately should bring people together, or is capable of bringing people together rather than pulling them apart. That's what I think Lincoln was trying to say at the end of his second inaugural, that when this is over, whenever that is, it is time to bind up the wounds and to care for the widow and the orphan and the veteran, no matter where they came from.